we're gonna make a berry, fruit, and nut cake that's inspired by a Russian candy bar, believe it or not. Come join me and we'll make it together. In Russia, there are 3 nuts that are cultivated widely. That's walnuts, hazelnuts, and pine nuts. We're going to use those walnuts in a dried fruit and nut cake that is yummy, easy, and delicious. So I've got an 8-inch springform pan here, and I have just a sheet of parchment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the parchment and I'm going to do a little bit of paper dolls. I'm being silly, but this reminds me a little bit of paper dolls, or that game we used to play in elementary school with the paper and you would fold it up. So here we go. So I folded it in 8ths now. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut off where the shortest piece is. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pan and I'm going to put the point of my parchment paper right in the middle, and then I'm going to straighten it out so that I can do a little indentation with my finger there where the pan edge, the bottom, reaches the side. Now, I guess I can just, now I'm going to cut that a little bit shy of where I did the indentation, and then look at this, y'all. All right, do I hear an ooh and an ah? It's perfect in the bottom of my springform pan. Isn't that fun? So I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil spray. You could use grapeseed oil. You could use any kind of oil. You could just wipe it out on the inside of your pan. And now I've got my parchment there. Now I'm sure that my cake is going to come out of the pan. So into my dried fruit and walnut cake, I'm going to start with my flour. Here we go, just like that. And the thing is I don't want to pack it in there. Like we packed the dark brown sugar into the measuring cup in one of the other recipes we've done on food travels. We don't want to do that with this. We want to just do light and airy so we have the correct amount of flour, but not too much. So now I've got a big pile. So what I'm going to do is grab a knife out and just kind of even it out on top. Now look at that. Now I have a perfect cup of flour. Did you see that I have 3 eggs? I know you saw that on the shot of ingredients earlier. I just have 3 eggs, and all I'm going to do is whisk them together with my flat roux whisk, which you know, I love this flat roux whisk. It really moves things around in the bowl. It's heavy duty. So now I'm going to put my 3 eggs right into my mixing bowl. And I love this cake because, of course, I don't have to get out my mixer for it. Now I have a cup of raw sugar, and raw sugar just means it's a little less processed, still sugar, but it's got a little more of the molasses left in it. I like the flavor, and the less processed things are a little better for us. So I'm putting that in next. So now I've got the eggs, so 3 large eggs, a cup of sugar. Now I'm going to put in my flour. So there goes my flour. And mix that up. Woo! I'm getting very excited. Here we go. So now I've got my flour in my bowl. So in here, I have the ground cardamom. I have ground cinnamon, which we all know about, and then I have ground nutmeg. And I did want to mention to you that nutmeg that comes from the nutmeg itself is always the most flavorful. And so you can buy these little guys right in the grocery store in the spice section, and then you just use the microplane to microplane it, and oh my gosh, it just, all of a sudden I got this pop of aroma. Okay, so that's my 3, I'll just move this over a little bit. That's my 3 spices there. And then the last spice I have is ground cloves. And I only have 1/8 a teaspoon of ground cloves because, you know, those ground cloves, they're really aromatic and they're very overwhelming if you use too many of them. So there's my ground cloves. I've got also about 1/8 a teaspoon of salt. And here are my cinnamon, cardamom, and nutmeg. It's almost like Christmas in a bowl, right? So lots of warm baking spices here. And so I'm going to get those incorporated before I put in my nuts and dried fruit that I talked about earlier. So here are my nuts, my walnuts, and my dried fruit. Come on, honey. There you go. And this batter, y'all, is so thick. I came up with this cake and I actually taught it in Russia at their biggest food festival fair kind of event. And I came up with the recipe because the Russians eat this candy bar that's kind of like peanut brittle all the time. They eat it all the time, and they use different nuts in it. So it might be a pine nut brittle, it might be a walnut brittle, it might be a hazelnut brittle, but it's a candy bar that they eat all the time. And then Russians love dried fruit, so I just put the 2 together and made a cake. And this cake is going to be so dense with nuts and fruit, it's going to be delicious, and of course all those yummy flavors from the spices. So here's my pan. And then what I'm going to do is, you kind of have to scrape this batter out because it's so thick and so full of nuts and dried fruit. So here we go, right in to my parchment lined springform pan. So this is a cake that you can make. You can double the recipe, make 2 of them. It freezes wonderfully. And you can top it with anything. Today we're going to top it with a very traditional Russian kind of topping. We're going to use whipped cream and honey. So here we go. I'll set that aside. This is what the cake looks like when it gets ready to go in the oven. So I have a preheated 300 degree, yes, 300 degree oven behind me, and I'm going to grab the cake, put it in the oven, and the great news is I have one that came out of the oven a couple hours ago, and so we're going to get to look at it and dig in. So what I'm going to do first of all is I think I'm going to run my knife around the edge of the cake before I even try to take it off, because that way, here we go, and it's so dense, y'all, with all those nuts and fruit in it. That way, I know that my springform pan is going to come off. Now what I can do is take my springform pan, and look at that. Yay! And now it's going to be super easy because I used insurance, right? That parchment paper. I'm going to take my hand, my very clean hand, turn my cake over. And now, I'm going to put the bottom there. And then, I'm going to take off my parchment. I'm going to go ahead and cut my piece. Oh my gosh, I can hear it going through all those yummy nuts and fruit. So here we go, look at that. And here's my whipped cream. I didn't put anything in the whipped cream. One of the things I noticed when I was in Russia and eating whipped cream, because of course when you're on a vacation like that, you have to taste everything. The whipped cream was very dense, and it wasn't sweet at all. So just beautiful whipped cream with a tiny, tiny drizzle of honey. And they used a lot of honey in Russia. They love it. So there is our fruit and nut cake. And it's one that I served in Russia. They loved it, and I love it too, and I hope you will too.